Don't you worry, the clip's about to begin, but don't forget to subscribe. Or else, don't make me turn this website around.
Colby from Cincinnati. For people in the live chats, be aware that Colby's pronouns are they, them. Colby, what did you want to ask about?
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Go ahead and hit us with your question.
All right, sweet. Yeah, okay. So the work that I go to is a rather unique one where there's one person who gets to talk all the time about his specific political beliefs, which go not only just into like full-on conspiracy QAnon stuff, but like absolutely advanced, like Hillary Clinton hid 50,000 babies under the tunnels of Nevada to breed them to create more fake voters, stuff like that. So I've argued with him, and I can argue myself just fine against these kinds of people. But that's not what I care about.
I can't let you go a moment further yet because I have to jump in on that one. If Hillary Clinton bred 50,000 babies under a tunnel in Nevada, those are natural born citizens and therefore not fake voters. So I just want to point out.
Well, no, they're fake voters because they like transport them onto a cruise ship.
Going on, but those are legal.
I didn't catch that. That's true.
Yeah. So
it's true. It's true.
Also, I don't know if this QAnon person knows this, but babies can't breed. You do need to be. In fact, one identifies the adolescence of a human based upon their ability to breed or not to breed in a very literal way when talking scientifically, obviously.
You can use mitosis to cell divide babies. That's possible.
It'd be very interesting. I have
it's not often done, but it's possible.
5 feet away from me that does the same thing. But yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, go ahead, Colby.
So my question comes in the part where I can argue against him just fine. But the issue is that he also is so ridiculously, like, fundamentally Christian, and literally everything he says, he always brings it back about how God's plan and all that stuff works. And my question is that the people around him, they treat him like a sage, like this guy is giving out crazy information. And the people that are listening to him are normal, and I think I can drag them away from that. So what is a way to kind of argue these kinds of points while not just throwing out a bunch of like studies and statistics that prove things are false, you know?
I might have a controversial take on this, so I'll let you go first, Vaush.
Yeah, I think that, so this is a really difficult dynamic. It's essentially, how do you let one crazy corrupt or prevent them from corrupting more people, which is really, really difficult because in most instances, if you jump between those two groups, you come off like the fuddy-duddy, you know? You're like, oh, hold on, everyone. I know you're all having a lot of fun here, but whoa, that's not true. Look at this study. And optically, that looks really terrible. Nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody wants to be hearing an entertaining, convincing story about clone babies and then have somebody jump in to ruin it. I think under most circumstances, it's almost a lost cause to directly appeal to the group of sensible people. I think the best thing that you can do is apply the Socratic method to the crazy one when he's trying to tell these stories. Rather than trying to interrupt the experience for the people you're trying to save, jump in and say like, oh, really? When did that happen? How did that happen? How do you know that happened? Where did you get that evidence from? Don't challenge it with studies. Just come off like a genuinely curious interlocutor, because generally speaking, those people fall apart if you ask them questions for long enough.
So my take's not controversial at all. It's almost identical. I think that when you're talking about a person who fancies himself a cult leader, and cult leaders, you literally all you can do is make them bleed in front of the cult. Not literally, a metaphorical make them bleed. And so where Vaush is right to call it the Socratic method, specific to these kinds of conversations, the ones that surround religion and to some degree politics. There are a lot of skills you can learn from like Anthony Magnabosco, who has the channel Street Epistemology, that is specifically about figuring out asking questions not so much about the fact itself, but how they got to that, not fact, the conclusion themselves, but the method by which they got to the conclusion. And what's fun about it when it comes to these ideological, my tongue just doesn't work today, these ideological conversations, is that without having to point it out and make it obvious, because then you become the asshole, you can take a person through a series of questions to a contradiction by just asking the, wait, but you said this earlier and now you're saying this. So how do we separate this and this, because they contradict otherwise? And don't showboat and celebrate the victory or the goal you just made, because people will internalize it themselves, and you don't want to push those walls up. So not only will the people who apparently you're doing this for, who's witnessing it, will they now have not just questions, but seen modeled for them how to ask these questions, which will affect the way they evaluate claims in the future as well. The individual you're talking to, the victory with somebody you are ideologically opposed to when you have a conversation is, you will never get the one where at the end they go, oh my God, you're right. Now I'm an atheist, or now I'm a leftist, or whatever. At the end of that one argument, it's the question you burn into their head, which makes them question things later when you're done. And in some areas makes them feel like they have to reevaluate and change their approach entirely, because now that you've made them come to the conclusion themselves they did something contradictory or hypocritical, they will go to great lengths to avoid that hypocrisy again.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes
Yeah, that answers my question pretty well. Thanks. So
that can even turn dishonest. I would say sometimes they do it even just as a mental technique that's still equally dishonest, where they go, okay, let me go Google what other people say to this challenge so I have a response next time, as opposed to, but yes, you've won if they are living if you start to live rent free in their brain.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So just in conclusion, just to make sure I have this all together, you simply just kind of ask them questions like, oh, well, where'd you get that, or where'd you find out this information, or when did this happen, or just keep challenging very little easy things until they eventually contradict themselves, and just be like, oh, that's interesting.
Right. So one of my favorite street epistemology things to go with talks about faith, and it's basically you ask them the question, okay, what is faith? And then if that is contradictory to what faith actually is, you talk about the difference between religious faith and scientific faith, and you ask those questions. And once you get them to a place where they are admitting that everybody is utilizing faith, then you come up with a question like, okay, so if you're using faith and a Mormon and a Muslim are all using faith, by what mechanism do we determine which of the three of you are correct in your faith? And that's the one where you usually get like a lot of like, oh shit, I don't know. And you basically get people admitting that the basis for their religion is only that they are pretty sure they're more confident than a person in another religion. And once you're there, I mean, that's often the first moment of a person losing their faith, which is an excellent moment to witness.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, Colby.
Sweet. Thank you. That's pretty much everything. One last thing, Vaush, thank you for the YouTube algorithm recommending your content. You pulled me out of Bernier busting 3 days before my early votes.
Yeah, no problem, comrade. I slipped the Google technicians a 20 to make sure it would get to you specifically. So I'm glad that it paid out.
Good old Cap.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one. Yeah, I think I've been enjoying most now these people who in the past would have been that, no, it's my way or the highway, and the introducing them to what he was talking about there was it doesn't matter. Basically, that's also something I've appreciated seeing out of people who follow you, because I read some of your comments and stuff, and people who do not understand the concept of making slow progress, but progress versus nothing is good.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues with the left and the online left specifically is that they're very averse to pragmatism. They're very invested in
Yep.
purity politics in a way that the right doesn't necessarily fall into quite as much. Though actually, lately, with Donald Trump losing, some of them have. There are some very far-right fasci white nationalist types who are screeching about how they're never going to support the Republican Party again if the Republican Party doesn't support Donald Trump in his attempt at a coup. That is phenomenal. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. I would love to see a bunch of seething, disaffected fascists make their own ineffective third party that nobody votes for or cares about, completely disconnected from the GOP funding base. That would be delightful. I would love it.
Yeah. Do you think there was any failure in political messaging this time from people on our end of the spectrum or other places? Because right now, if you look at the win Biden's about to pull off, but the fact that there was congressional success, especially in the House for Republicans, what that indicates is a ton of votes. Yes, we got unprecedented support, but it means a lot of people went and thought the only thing they had to vote for was Biden and otherwise didn't fill out their ballot. They put in an otherwise blank ballot. That's really the only viable way you get to the result we have right now, because Republicans in general had good success, and yet Biden has won.
Well, turnout was better for both parties, but I definitely think that the faults in the Democratic Party and their messaging had more to do with the failure of moderate Democrats and the Democratic establishment than it did like the farther progressive or actively socialist contingent of the party.
I do wish more people had taken their down ballots more seriously, but I'll take the victory we have, and hopefully we can correct this because we're going to now have a national race in Georgia with these runoff races. These will not feel like just a local thing this next time. You're talking the amount of money. And listen,
like 100 million easily, like minimum 100 million spent on those two runoff races
alone. And Bloomberg better match it by himself. I'll take his money, even if I can't stand the guy.
Hey, thanks for checking out this clip for The Line. While you're here, hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then share this with that bitter uncle of yours who loves talking about the good old days.